This car right here behind me is the M240i. It's an amazing car, and it comes with one of the best engines BMW have ever made, the B58, which people call bulletproof, but it has one major flaw. I forgot to pull the second latch. That's better. Now here we have what people call the bulletproof B58, but there is one issue with it, one little niggle which I had to get sorted to make sure this thing lasts a long time. And it's one of these things right here, a Bosch BMW injector. Now you might be wondering, why is this part so vital and why have I changed it? Well, I've made countless videos on my YouTube channel talking about the B58 injectors and how sometimes they can fail, they can stick open, stay closed. There's a lot of theories and a lot of problems regarding them. And this video isn't going to be a video about me telling you all the issues and complications I ran into. This video is me actually installing them to make sure that this engine is never going to run into those issues ever. Now inside here, if I can actually open the box one-handedly, is a Bosch B58 injector. And believe it or not, you'll look at these part numbers and you might even notice this one doesn't look brand new and it's got the old kind of faulty prone injector part number. That's because I've already changed them. But what you guys are going to be seeing is me actually pulling these old injectors out of my B58 and installing the brand new revised ones. And I am keeping these injectors purely because if somebody comes to buy the car, I can show them that I've actually forked out the money to pay for 6 new brand new injectors to prove that it has been done. And here they all are, all in the box. So like I mentioned, I'm not going to be going into detail about why you should replace these. Long story short, if they stay open, you can flood your engine and kind of wash the bores. If the injector stays shut, then that cylinder is getting no fuel. It heats up really quickly because it's not getting cooling. The piston has nowhere to go and it expands. And then obviously you run into some catastrophic engine failure, which is not good. So I'm not saying this to scaremonger you guys. This is simply a tutorial video of me showing you guys exactly how I changed them. I think this is going to be one of the most detailed versions on YouTube. And of course, if I run into any complications, I'm going to share them with you guys because I've done this for the first time. I wanted to do it myself. I bought the tool. So without any further ado, let's get into it. And again, if this video helps you guys in any way, then make sure to give it a like so more people can see it. Apart from that, let's skip into the voiceover so you guys can see exactly how I installed these 6 brand new injectors and removed my old ones with none of them snapping. You guys actually join me now with a voiceover. We're going to start this video simply by me explaining everything and talking you guys through exactly how to do this. We're going to start off with this little 8mm nut here. You want to make sure you keep these back on the fuel rail once you've disconnected them because, trust me, if you lose them, that's going to be a big problem. We've also got the fuel rail sensor at the end, which you want to make sure you've unplugged. Now we're moving straight on to removing the actual fuel lines. These are a 17mm and you want to disconnect them. Make sure you catch the fuel with a rag or any of that kind of stuff so you don't make a mess. You can actually see the fuel line here. It simply goes on like that. So make sure you don't lose any of these parts. Now that we've got the coil packs and everything else like that removed and all the wiring, you can start by actually cracking these fuel rail bolts off and loosening them. There's quite a few. There's 4 holding each fuel rail down. There's actually 2 fuel rails. It's not one single large one which you see on similar engines. Once these have actually been removed, you can then make sure to put them somewhere safe. I was keeping mine all in some sort of box to make sure I didn't lose any of the bolts and everything was being kept together nice and neatly. Those little bolts I'm pointing to just there, we don't actually need to remove just yet. And this is the fitting tool, which you can order off Amazon or you can get an expensive one. They're all basically the same, but these little kind of braces here, they're magnetic. So as you can see, they kind of fit on and you don't have to worry about dropping them or losing them. They hold themselves in place, which is really handy. And basically, all you have to do with this tool is simply just act as if you're fitting the fuel rail back. It goes in all the original fuel rail bolts, and that's pretty simple. That's all you have to do. And now that the fuel rail is actually removed, you can fit this tool and you've got those 4 kind of Torx or Allen key kind of bolts that you actually have to tighten up to fit onto the fuel rail nicely. Now be careful not to make the same mistake that I did and actually fit the main tool to the actual engine itself before actually fitting this very important piece. This piece which I'm demonstrating just here is actually what connects to the fuel injector, and you obviously need these pieces, they're very important. But the little pin lifts up, and if you face the pin towards the kind of windshield of the car and then twist it towards you, kind of facing from the engine bay, it will lock into place and the pin will simply push down, as you'll see just in this clip. And once that pin is pushed down, that is fixed on. You can't pull it off. As you can see, I'm trying to here, but it's fixed on very well, which is really good. So you want to do that for quite a few of them. Now I was going with this learning at the same time, so there were some mistakes made. There weren't any instructions here. I was kind of going off and making it up as I go, and I actually decided to do one injector at a time purely because you actually can't get your spanner in to actually undo them if you fit kind of all 3 of them in at once. And as you can see here, once this is all fitted, which I'll explain in just a second of how you actually fit it, it's very easy to remove them. This device is very clever, and whoever engineered this, I give them a pat on the back, but it's actually a left-hand thread. You can see here when I zoom in on the picture that this threads in the wrong way. It kind of goes against the grain to do that, but it's a very important reason it is a left-hand thread, and that is because when you're actually threading onto the injector, that kind of brass golden piece doesn't actually come undone. But I promise you, once you've actually done the first fuel rail, the second side will be a lot easier once you actually know what you're doing. But you've just got to be very careful not to cross thread that brass piece onto the injector thread, because if you are replacing them or using your original injectors, if you damage that thread, that's going to be pretty bad news. So be very careful when doing this. Now this is the mistake I made. You can see me trying to remove the middle injector and the other ones were in the way, so kind of make sure to do it in a way that you can get your spanner around and make your life easier for yourself. Now we kind of were ready to remove the injectors fully here. We thought they had come out of the actual cylinder head enough, but they actually hadn't. So we had to continue to unwind this brass piece, which you can see there is pulling the injector up higher even more, and this allowed it to be completely free. Quick little Monster energy drink to keep me going, because this was kind of done very late at night. But then once they're all done, the injectors are removed, and the same applies for just the back fuel rail. Removing that, and then we can actually connect onto the injectors again to do the rear ones. You'll see these little contact lenses here, which I didn't show you to begin with. Now, I've heard a lot of people say that these are only here purely for the factory assemble of injectors. You don't actually need to reuse these, so you can basically bin them. I didn't reuse them, but you can if you want to. But for this final part, we're moving on to cylinder 4, 5 and 6 for the rear of the engine. I was a little bit concerned about these ones because I've seen a lot of forums online saying that cylinder 6 can be quite stuck. I mean, 1, 2 and 3 injectors, they came out like butter. I was genuinely surprised. Now the car wasn't warm, the car had actually not been run for probably about a week before doing this. So it had been sat in the garage for a long time, but as you can see we started straight with cylinder number 6, which I was most concerned about because I thought this one was going to be problematic, and it actually came out surprisingly well. It was one of the easiest injectors that we removed throughout the day, and then we moved on to cylinder number 5, which was a little bit tighter to my surprise. And I actually got a clip here which I don't think anyone has shown online before of actually being able to lift the injector up. You can see how this tool is working on this time lapse here, and you can also see how important it is to actually make sure the thread gets on. You can see I'm having to thread it on while also kind of guiding it with my finger, because it's very important not to cross thread this, otherwise you'll damage your tool. But once that is done and the thread is located, you can see it actually pulling the injector up. And now that that piece is maxed out, we then have to carry on by removing the actual brass piece to get the extra lift. As you can see here, removing that up, and it's slowly pulling the injector up, no problem at all. So we've got a little time lapse here of me actually unthreading everything else. It was a lot to do and a lot to kind of work out and make sure that everything was coming out nicely. Again, I didn't want to force anything or damage anything, and once that was removed we could actually take a look at all 6 injectors, which came out of my Gen 1 B58 with no problems at all. Here you can see I actually freeze the frame on cylinder number 1, and that is where your injector seats, so it's very important that this area is cleaned up. And if you had issues like mine where they were a little bit dirty, it's very important to keep them clean. So what I did was I got some double-sided sticky tape and I wrapped it around a kind of long screwdriver, and I just very carefully just kind of tried to clean the areas because I didn't want any debris going inside the cylinders itself, and that was just a really easy way that I managed to get them looking all clean, ready before installing the new injectors. Now here are the 6 old ones. Now these have covered quite a few miles, and I was pretty impressed with the condition of them, and you can see on one of them, which I will point out here, this is cylinder number 5, and it was slowly leaking some fuel onto the slate table here, and you can see the kind of tip of it looks a little bit damp and wet compared to the other ones, and this continued to leak some fuel out for a couple days while they were sat inside the house. So I don't know why that would be, and maybe you can let me know in the comments below. I don't know if it is the cause of that injector slowly leaking, but here you can take a closer look at the Teflon seals, and these are very important because these are what actually seal the direct injection system, which is a very powerful kind of pressurized fuel system. And to compress these on my new injectors, which you can see here, I did a kind of cowboy job, which actually worked flawlessly. I got some old fuel line and I slowly pressed it over the new injectors with the Teflon seals, and I let them sit for about 24 hours, and this actually compressed them. So you can get a proper tool, which I probably would advise and is better, but you can do what I did and that worked completely fine. Here you can see the old injector, and this ends in the part number 990. You don't need to worry about the 04. The 990 kind of indicates that it's the previous part number, and then we can actually take a closer look at the newer injectors, and these part numbers end in 396. So you can't see these when they're in the car, which is a real shame. You actually do have to remove them to see if you've got the old or revised injectors, which is a real annoying thing. However, you can see here that I've got the new part number, the revised injectors, and hopefully I should have no issues with these in the future. So equally a scary bit now of actually installing the new injectors, because I didn't want anything to go wrong. You can see here that I've started to kind of assemble one, and I will go into more detail in fitting these onto the fuel rail in just a second. But this little spacing block comes in your injector removal kit tool, and you can't make this up. This is a very precise measurement, and it's kind of the way it has to be. You have to have this block to do it. Some people don't, but I wouldn't want to take the risk. You can see here that the injector is still quite loose, and it's very important that you kind of count the threads to make sure that the threads are equal on both sides. You don't want one thread to be pulling harder than the other. And just a quick note here, these bolts for the fuel rail and the injectors are one-time use. You can't use them again. Well, you can, but I wouldn't. It's advised that you don't. So take my advice and buy new bolts. They cost me like £30 directly from BMW, so it's kind of a no-brainer. Now we're actually getting to the point where we can have some fun and assemble these new injectors onto the fuel rail. This was kind of the most enjoyable part because everything kind of worked as it should, and you kind of got to enjoy yourself while doing it. It's very important you remember the way these came out with the actual kind of fitting, because when these fit onto the engine harness, you can see the obviously clip where your electrical plug plugs in only goes on one side, so make sure you get that right. And then you want to be very careful you don't cross thread these. Just take your time and make sure that you kind of thread them in and keep the threads even, and then you can actually bring your spacing block along once you brought them in enough. And this is where you kind of have to have some skill and patience and time to just take your time with this. You can put the spacing block in and then tighten your threads up ever so slightly just until it pinches the block and you can remove it. It's still a little bit loose, so I tighten them a little bit more. You don't want to do it too tight, you can't remove the block. It's as simple as that. And then count the threads to make sure they're even on each side. Now I did do this, and then I left the injectors sitting overnight with the actual kind of rubber hose sitting on the Teflon seals so that they would be compressed, ready to assemble them the next day. And you can see here I've got all the fuel rail assembled, all the bolts ready to go. It's completely fine for these injectors to be loose like that. They're actually designed to be like that. It seems a little bit weird that they're not, but that is the correct way, and that is what every online guide and every video that I've seen has shown me to do, and I'm telling you guys to do it in this video. So now we've fast forwarded about a day when the Teflon seals had had some time to actually compress, and we were getting ready to assemble these back into the engine bay. Now I'm pretty sure I had already fitted cylinder number 4, 5 and 6 before I started filming this, because I wanted to make sure I knew what I was doing before I started filming. But I just had some tissue and blue roll just covering the holes to make sure nothing kind of got in to contaminate them or get in any parts that shouldn't. And surprisingly, cylinder 1, 3 and 6 didn't kind of slot in as quickly as the previous injectors did with cylinder 4, 5 and 6. These ones are a little bit of a pain to get in, but once we did, you just want to take your time making sure everything is even, and you can see how much higher the fuel rail on the front of the engine bay sits compared to the one at the back of the engine bay now that it's sat down. Now what I was doing here was I was reassembling the fuel rail bolts that bolt into the head, and I was just being very careful just to kind of thread these in by hand. And again, there was no kind of torque spec yet or anything like that. I was just going in very gently, making sure these were all going down evenly, and I'll actually list all of the torque specs in the description below, because I can't actually remember off the top of my head exactly what they are, and I wouldn't want to lie to you guys saying there's something that they're not, but they are stupidly low. There's something like 5 Newton meters, and I think for the first time you actually have to do 2 Newton meters, but again, check the description and that will give you the exact stats so you guys can do this. And again, you don't want to be doing this with that torque wrench. This is a very precision thing. You wouldn't tighten your rod bearings or your kind of main bearings just by hand and then kind of swing them a bit. There's obviously a specific torque setting, so you've got to make sure you follow that. Now I time-lapse this bit because you actually have to go 90 degrees in a specific order, kind of working your way from one to the other side to make sure the fuel rail goes down evenly. And here you can actually see we are torquing them up to spec in the correct order, and once that was done, you'll be able to see that I actually kind of marked them with a little bit of kind of paint to make sure that they didn't move, and I'll show you that in just a second. So once the fuel rail bolts were kind of tight, you can now see me kind of tightening up the actual injector bolts, and you want to go in the same order that I'm going in, because the goal here is to bring the injector up straight. You don't want it to come up at an angle, because then you could have some serious fuel leaks and that wouldn't be good. So you want to tighten each side at 90 degrees until they kind of come up to the same level of torque, and then you'll be able to actually torque them down. And once they have hit the torque marker, you'll then go 90 degrees on them again. So there is a whole procedure to this. Again, I'll leave information in the description so you guys can have a thorough read. I'd suggest you definitely do some research on exactly the torque specs and stuff, because you have to do newton meters and then 90 degrees. It could be a little bit of a shambles, so I'd definitely advise that you guys do some research on that. Now we have everything assembled. That was the hardest bit done, and now it's the easy bit of simply just putting everything back. You can see a little paint marker. I did this for every single bolt just so I could make sure that none were coming undone and to make sure that everything wasn't moving. And here you can see we're going to put everything back. But now it's all done. The car looks like nothing has ever happened. But the question is it even going to run? Apparently these injectors need zero coding and they're all plug and play, but we'll see about that. And inside this box, we've got the remaining 6 faulty injectors. And I say faulty, not in the fact that any of them have failed on me, but I'm pretty sure I got pretty close to it. So I am going to call them faulty, and now we've got these brand new faultless injectors, some might say. So now for the scariest part, the first start with these new injectors. All I've done since installing them now is I've reconnected the battery. Let's get inside the car, crank it over, and let's see how long it takes to start. And here's what it looks like before we actually start it. You can see everything has gone back, all in the original place. I've torqued everything down to spec, even the coil pack bolts. Everything has been torqued back to spec. Everything should have been exactly the same as if BMW did these injectors for me. So here comes the scary part. Let's get this started up. I'm kind of slightly nervous, but also very excited at the same time. I've seen other people install these on YouTube and their cars started straight up, so I'm expecting the same for mine. So let's start with ignition on. Some people actually crank the car over with no spark plugs plugged in or the injectors unplugged, but I don't really see any point in that. Let's just fire it up straight away and see how long it takes to start. Here we go. Neutral. Right. 3, 2, 1. Perfect. It runs amazingly. Right, let's check for any leaks. This is always a scary part when I fit something new to the car. I'm just waiting for like fuel to be spewing out everywhere where I haven't installed something correctly. But look in here, this thing is running perfectly. I mean, the injectors, they seem the same kind of loudness. Direct injection is very loud anyway, so I didn't expect it to be any quieter. But there's no fuel leaking out from anywhere. All seems pretty good. So I think we can actually get away with closing the bonnet and having a happy day. Let's go. All right, this thing's running fine. I think we can turn it off now. So then, changing the injectors to the revised ones on your B58. Is it possible? Yes. Did I get lucky? Yes, because no injectors were stuck. I was very concerned that some of the injectors would actually get stuck or be seized or even snap, and then that's a lot of money to fix. So with fitting these revised ones and pulling out my old ones, I did get lucky. But again, I took my time, I was patient with it, and I made sure to do everything the right way. And maybe I didn't get lucky, but I have a feeling I did. If you guys did enjoy this video though, you can give it a thumbs up. If you have any comments or any questions, then leave them down below and I'll personally answer them. Apart from that, I'd like to say a massive thank you for you guys watching today. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye for now.